Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. Before we begin, I'd just like to take a quick moment. If these videos help you relax, fall asleep, or simply enjoy a quieter evening, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It truly means a lot to us and helps keep the channel running and growing. For those of you who are new here, here's how our videos are structured. Each one starts with around an hour of storytelling, followed by an hour of soothing background music to help you rest, unwind, or create a peaceful atmosphere. We hope this format gives you a more relaxing and comfortable experience. Feel free to leave a comment with any thoughts or suggestions, and if you find it helpful, we'd be grateful if you shared it with friends or loved ones. Thank you so much for being here with us. Now, let's get into tonight's stories. I'm Anna, and my small family just moved to Columbus, Ohio, about 6 months ago. The two-story house we bought is in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Everything was perfect for the first 3 months. I set up a cozy workspace in the downstairs den, Mike was settling in well at his new job, and Emma quickly made friends at school. We even got to know most of our neighbors, except for the man living in the house next door. Mike said he'd met him once, a retired chemistry professor named Daniel Lee. He lived alone and preferred his privacy. Then winter came, and with it, a strange feeling. In the afternoons, I started to feel tired. My mind was foggy, and I couldn't focus. Headaches appeared often, starting at my temples and spreading to the back of my head. At first, I figured it was just the lack of sunlight and my body adjusting to the colder weather. I wrote down my symptoms in a journal and tried to change my diet, exercise more, and even take vitamin D supplements. But it didn't seem to help. Then Emma started having morning sickness and trouble sleeping at night. "I think we should take Emma to the doctor," I told Mike. "I think you're just worrying too much, Sarah. We just went through a big move. Our bodies need time to adjust." Maybe Mike was right, but I was still going to keep an eye on everything. I started tracking the times we felt worst, the food we ate, even the weather. After a week, the results showed our symptoms seemed to get worse in the evenings and early mornings. One day, I felt my body suddenly and noticeably exhausted after a visit from our neighbor, Mr. Daniel. Mike thought he was pleasant, but I didn't. His eyes were too intense, his smile fake, and he always found reasons to come over more often. The situation became serious when Emma had a seizure at school. The results came back. Emma didn't have a fever, and all tests showed nothing unusual. We were sent home with advice to monitor her and come back if she had more seizures. After Emma fell asleep, I told Mike, "I think there's something in this house making us sick, and Mr. Lee is involved." Mike was surprised. "Daniel? He's very friendly. He has a chemistry degree and researches narcotics." I looked him up. "So what? That doesn't incriminate him. I've seen him lurking around the house when you're at work, and our symptoms get worse every time he comes over. You're being paranoid. Maybe you should see a therapist." I felt helpless and disappointed after talking to Mike. He insisted on defending a stranger instead of worrying about his wife and daughter. I ordered small surveillance cameras online, placing them on the porch, at the front door, and in the main ventilation room. I also bought an air testing kit and sent samples to a private lab. I started sleeping in Emma's room for her safety. One night, I heard a sound, a soft hiss, like gas escaping. I turned on the light and checked around, but saw nothing. The next morning, I checked the cameras. At 2 a.m., Daniel Lee approached our house, wearing a gas mask and carrying a small device. Then, he moved to Emma's window, but seemed to give up when he noticed the window was tightly closed. I felt nauseous and terrified. I was right. He was poisoning us, but why? I needed more concrete evidence before going to the police. I didn't tell Mike about the video or the samples until I had enough proof. The lab results came back a day later. According to the report, they found traces of methadone and hydrocodone in the air and drinking water samples. Small amounts, but enough to cause the symptoms we were experiencing with prolonged exposure. What should I do now? I couldn't confront Lee alone. I needed Mike to trust me. I waited until Emma was asleep, then sat down with Mike and showed him the video and the lab report. Mike stared at the screen, then at me. There was something in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? We need to call the police. Number not yet. We need more evidence. Mike, he's slowly killing us. I'll talk to Daniel tomorrow. There might be an explanation. Mike's answer confused me even more. Why would he want to talk to the person harming his family? Why not call the police immediately? A horrifying thought suddenly struck me, but I immediately dismissed it. No, Mike couldn't know about this. He couldn't be involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I rewatched the camera footage again and again, and then I noticed what I had missed. On one of the old videos, there was a figure at the front door at midnight. Not Daniel Lee, but Mike. He was opening the door, as if waiting for someone. I rummaged through Mike's phone when he went to the bathroom the next morning. I found messages between him and Daniel, messages talking about dosage, effects, and leaving no trace. And then I found the reason. When she's gone, I'll have everything, the insurance and freedom. Stick to the plan. Slowly, no one will suspect. I felt like my world collapsed. My husband was trying to kill me. I took screenshots of the messages, backed up the videos to a hard drive that I hid in my bag. I told Mike I was taking Emma to the doctor for further checks. Instead, I drove straight to the police station. They arrested Mike and Daniel that very day. A search of Daniel's house revealed a mini laboratory where he concocted drug mixtures. They found documents on methods of slow poisoning that leave no trace, and a large payment from Mike's secret account. Investigations showed Mike was having an affair and wanted to be free but didn't want to split assets or pay alimony. He met Daniel, a chemist who had been fired for unethical experiments, on an online forum. Together, they planned to slowly poison me, causing symptoms similar to a mental disorder and eventually leading to a seemingly natural death. Mike and Daniel were both charged with conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated assault. I was granted a restraining order and took Emma away from Columbus to a small coastal town on the shores of Lake Erie, a place where we could start over. It's been 6 months since we left. Emma has recovered both physically and mentally. I'm still healing, still learning to trust again. I'm Ricky, 35, still single, and just trying to find some peace after everything life's thrown at me. My new place is on the edge of a quiet little town, tucked right up next to the forest. The vibe here is totally different from the packed, noisy spots I used to live in. The houses are spread out, mostly older folks living here, just looking for some peace in their golden years. The house is simple, but comfy, with a little backyard facing the woods and a dirt road that takes you into town. Across from my place is this old house with peeling paint and a wooden fence stacked with layers, making it look even older. The guy who owned it was this guy in his 50s named Gavin. Found that out when I said hi to the neighbors. I spotted Gavin a few times, not because I was nosy, just wanted to know when he was around so I could say hey. On the afternoon of day 3 after moving in, I swung by Gavin's place to say hi and share some cake. Gavin opened the door looking awkward, but he lit up real quick when I introduced myself and said hey. He invited me in, and while he sounded friendly, his voice had this weird shake to it. I walked in and noticed his place was pretty messy. The furniture was old, and it felt kind of stuffy with no natural light. I plopped down on the old sofa, and Gavin brought me a glass of orange juice. I smiled, grabbed it, took a sip, but then had to stop right away. There was a long, yellow hair floating in the drink. I tried to ignore the weirdness, set the glass down, and looked up at him. I asked him a bit about his life, and Gavin said he was also on his own, like the neighbors, and that he was fine with everything for now. As Gavin was talking, he turned away and suddenly blasted the music really loud. the high-pitched tune shaking the whole place. I couldn't hide my surprise, and Gavin busted out laughing, his face all red and puffed up, saying that was his way of chilling out. I started feeling disrespected, so I politely said bye and left. That was the one and only time I went to Gavin's place and talked to him. Every move Gavin made, every look in his eyes, just screamed weird eccentricity. Even though I tried not to judge, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't like any of the other older folks I'd met. One time when I was coming back from town, I walked by Gavin's place and saw a young girl standing at the window and waving at me. But the way she looked was off, way too excited for just a random encounter. I clearly remembered Gavin saying he lived alone, so maybe this was his daughter stopping by for a visit. I smiled back, telling myself not to overthink it, but I still had a weird feeling about the whole thing. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of stuff crashing, furniture being smashed, and kids crying loudly just left me feeling totally confused. I went to the window to check it out, and I guessed the noise was coming from Gavin's place. I didn't want to get involved in other people's family drama, but those sounds really made me uneasy. A few days later, I saw another girl at Gavin's place. She was by the window too, looking all rushed, waving at me way too eagerly, like she was trying to get my attention. I was pretty sure this wasn't the same girl I saw last time. The girl's eyes didn't look happy. Instead, she seemed worried and in a rush about something. The confusion in my mind just kept growing, but I kept telling myself I was probably overthinking it. Once again, I gave her a quick hello and then just took off. The third time, I saw a girl totally different from the other two, with shiny golden hair. She just stood there, waving her hand slowly, not saying a word. This time I couldn't calm down anymore, so I decided to go over and ask. But after I took a few steps, Gavin came out of the house, looked at me, and nodded his chin. I was gonna ask about the girls, but when I pointed to the window, she was gone. Who were these girls? Why did they keep showing up and disappearing? The questions kept swirling in my head, sticking with me day and night, making it hard to focus on anything else. I hit peak unease when I saw this skinny, pale girl with cuts on her arms standing in front of his house. Seeing that made it impossible for me to sit still. I decided to call the cops and tell them about all the weird stuff I'd seen. The police showed up pretty quickly. As they knocked on the guy's door, I stood at my window, heart pounding. At first, he answered the door all calm, but when the police asked to come in and check, he got all tense. The police searched the house, and what they found freaked both me and them out. Up on the second floor, they found 3 girls locked up. All 3 were chained up, their bodies really skinny, covered in old and new wounds. Those girls were the ones I'd seen through the window. What was even worse and totally disgusting was that the 3 girls were the victims of Gavin's kidnapping, keeping them locked up and abusing them for the past 10 years. The little girl was Gavin's daughter with the second girl he had kidnapped. I stood outside, frozen, watching the police take that bastard to the car. His face was no longer the cheerful or confused look like the first day we met. It was just cold, blank, and creepy. I went back home, but the images of those girls, their pleading eyes, and the creepy sounds from the night before kept popping up in my head. All 3 of them had called out to me, full of hope, joy, panic, and desperation. I can't stop thinking that if I hadn't called the police, they would have had to keep going through that pain for who knows how many more years. Based on a true case that once shocked the entire United States, this story tells of 3 young women who were illegally held captive for a decade by a man in a house in Cleveland, Ohio. The first victim was Michelle Knight, who was 21 years old at the time. A year later, 17-year-old high school student Amanda Berry went missing on her way home from work. The last was Gina DeJesus, who was only 14 when she lost contact with her family. For 10 long years, the 3 women lived under strict control, completely isolated from the outside world. Despite the unimaginable conditions, they never lost hope for freedom. That resilience was eventually rewarded when one of them found a chance to call for help from a neighbor, an act that led to their rescue. The case was soon brought to light, and the perpetrator received a harsh sentence, putting an end to a dark chapter in the victims' lives. Yet what is even more admirable is that these three women chose to move forward, rising above their past and becoming symbols of resilience, an inspiration to millions around the world. I'm Ava, and I'm 16. It all started about 6 months after my family moved to this quiet neighborhood. My parents picked this place because it was known for being safe, having good schools, and a friendly community. Our next-door neighbor was Mrs. Allen, a middle-aged widow who seemed really polite. Her son, Joey, was my age. At first, Joey seemed like a normal kid, maybe a bit quiet and shy, but always polite when we bumped into each other. He usually wore big hoodies no matter the weather, and I rarely saw him with friends. My parents always said Joey was a good kid whenever they saw him helping his mom with yard work or carrying groceries inside. I can't say exactly when things started to get weird. Maybe it was the glances that lasted a little too long when we saw each other in the school parking lot. Joey always seemed to show up at the grocery store, the library, or the movie theater at the same time as me. At first, I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence in a small town. I started to notice how Joey would change his schedule to walk to school at the same time as me. He always sat close enough to overhear my conversations in the cafeteria. His bedroom window always seemed to have a light on. Sometimes, I just felt like someone was watching me. My mom gently brushed off my concerns, saying, "You're at that age where everyone notices you. There's no need to overthink it." But I still felt uneasy, and that feeling wouldn't go away, which made me pretty stressed out. One night, my parents went to a company party and were coming home late, so I was home alone. Rain started to fall outside, and the wind was pretty strong. Around midnight, I finished my essay and decided to go to bed. The house was strangely quiet. I was so tired that I fell asleep right away. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I woke up. At first, there was nothing but the gentle ticking of the clock on the wall and the sound of rain outside. But then, I realized another sound, a very faint breathing. I opened my eyes wide, held my breath, and listened. And it was coming from under my bed. My body froze. A cold dread spread through me, from the top of my head to my toes. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Someone was under my bed. My heart hammered, and my brain frantically searched for a plan. I decided the best option was to keep pretending to be asleep while I figured out what to do. Trying my best to keep my breathing even, I let one hand drop naturally off the side of the bed, as if I was just rolling over in my sleep. And then, my fingers touched human hair. All pretense vanished. I shot upright and leaped out of bed, unable to stop the scream that ripped from my throat. At the same moment, a dark figure emerged from under the bed. It was Joey. He stood there in his familiar black hoodie, his eyes wide. In his hand was a knife. Time seemed to stand still for a few long seconds as we stared at each other. I grabbed my bedside lamp and hurled it straight at Joey. It missed him, but it created enough of a distraction for me to bolt for the door. I heard Joey stumble behind me, probably tripping over something in the dark. I ran downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear hurried footsteps chasing me. At the front door, I fumbled with the deadbolt, my trembling hands making the simple task difficult. Finally, the door swung open, and I ran to the nearest house with lights on, Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins' place down the street. I banged on the door frantically, yelling my name and begging for help. The door opened, and Mr. Jenkins' confused face appeared. I quickly explained everything, and Mr. Jenkins immediately called the police. My parents rushed home from their party. Police searched Mrs. Allen's house, and then, even more horrifying things were discovered. Joey hadn't just been watching me from afar. He had snuck into my room multiple times for months. His room was a chilling shrine dedicated to me. Hundreds of photos of me doing all sorts of activities were plastered all over the walls. In a journal, police found detailed entries about what Joey called observation nights. Nights when he hid under my bed and simply watched me sleep. He described the feeling of touching my hair, wrote about my scent, the sounds I made while sleeping, and times he rummaged through my belongings when I left the room. But the most terrifying part, the one that made even the police officers shiver, Joey had explicitly written, "Tonight will be different. Ava will be mine forever. We will always be together in death." And he had brought the tools to carry out that plan. The knife I had seen, rope, duct tape, and a bottle of sleeping pills. During the interrogation, Joey confessed to all of it with a disturbing calmness. He said he had fallen in love with me the first day he saw me, that we belonged together, and if he couldn't have me, then no one could. He detailed how he broke into my house through a first-floor window I had forgotten to lock. More than a year after the incident, I still wake up every night, my heart pounding, imagining someone hiding under my bed. Joey is in a mental institution. My family moved to another city, but I know I'll never feel truly safe again.
I'm Oscar, 26 years old, living alone in New York. Because I have an online job and have free time, I often sleep during the day and then work at night. In recent months, a 7-Eleven convenience store opened near my house. I really enjoy being able to buy food at night while working. A man named David, 45 years old, is the owner of the store. David is recruiting staff and temporarily looks after this place. David designed a room at the back of the store to provide a comfortable place to rest. He was funny and kind. Sometime later, the store had another female employee. Her appearance is not very outstanding, but her way of talking attracted me. Her name is Mary, 26 years old, and she is Mr. David's niece. Gradually, I stopped by the convenience store several times a day to talk to Mary. I started to see that Mary had feelings for me. But David gradually became more grumpy every time he saw me. I guess David is upset because I'm affecting Mary's work. He met me privately and harshly asked me to stay away from Mary. David gave the reason that he did not want Mary to be in danger when getting acquainted with strangers. It's ironic that Mary is old enough to make her own decisions about her life. Of course, I didn't listen to David. Since that tense conversation, David continuously appeared at the store. It's like he's guarding Mary and I so we don't have a chance to come into contact. Many times I asked Mary out to have her own space. She happily accepted, but then always had a reason to refuse. One day I stayed up late to meet a deadline and felt hungry. I went to the convenience store. There was no one inside. I called out to David and he didn't answer. I walked around and then accidentally stopped at the door leading to the room at the back of the store. Just as I was about to approach the door, it suddenly opened loudly. Mary walked out looking haggard, her clothes disheveled. She smiled very awkwardly at me, raised her hand to close the door, not giving me a chance to look inside. I was extremely surprised to see Mary. This was not her shift. Looking at Mary's body, I still saw bruises. I asked worriedly, but she avoided my eyes and said she was fine. That night, I no longer had enough concentration and spirit to work. I always think about Mary and many questions pop up in my head. The following days, I did not see David appear again. Mary said that David had an accident and broke his leg so he would stay home and rest for a while. Supervising and operating that store will be in charge of Mary. She will stay at the store and use David's room. Mr. David also recruited an additional employee, a middle-aged woman named Joan. Mary and I became a couple not long after. Unlike other couples, our date spot is always a convenience store. Mary never let me or Miss Joan into the back room of the store. One time, I used the restroom at the store. After draining the water, I saw something floating back. It looked like meat and had a very unpleasant smell. I guess the pipe was clogged. This must be leftover food someone had flushed down. This condition lasted for several weeks afterward. Not only the toilet, the store's drain was also clogged. I wanted to handle this for Mary, but she said she would do it herself. It's been a while since David returned to the store. Mary also did not care much for her uncle. The next strange thing is that Miss Joan also disappeared after nearly a month of working here. That day, Mary and I were at the store when the police came to investigate Miss Joan's disappearance. Mary happily cooperated and said she had resigned from the store a week before the missing information was reported. One time I went to the store looking for Mary but couldn't find her. I couldn't hold back my curiosity anymore, so I decided to enter the room at the back of the store to find her. The space inside is very stuffy and dark. I smelled clearly the smell of disinfectant and cleaning fluid. There was something in the corner of the room. I approached it and saw it was a chainsaw. Do convenience stores also use this?
What are you doing here?
Mary shouted loudly, startling me. She stood in the doorway, staring at me and full of anger. Before I could react, Mary immediately kicked me out and slammed the door. I returned home with all kinds of surprised and helpless emotions inside me. The next day, the convenience store closed. I also completely lost contact with Mary. About a week passed. I was worried and couldn't do anything. I decided to report to the police and then received a call from the police. They asked me to come to the station to cooperate in the investigation of the murder of 2 people. Strange things happened all at once. I fell into extreme confusion. The police questioned me about my connection to the woman named Mary. I replied, "She is my girlfriend." Police said she is missing and is the prime suspect for the murder. The first victim is David, who she claims is her uncle, who is actually her lover. Currently, the police have only found Mr. David's head and hands hidden in the room behind the store. They are still looking for other parts of the body. The next victim was Miss Joan. The police found her body in the same room, wrapped neatly in a very large bag with her limbs severed. Police suspect that the chainsaw in the room was the tool she used to perform the dismemberment process. I was shocked to hear the information from the police. I remembered all of Mary's strange expressions over the past time. Her carefree appearance that night. Maybe she just did something bad to Mr. David. What I saw in the toilet was most likely his flesh. Miss Jones is also likely to be murdered when she learns the horrifying truth about Mr. David. Police are still actively searching for Mary. I feel scared and disgusted that I have loved the devil all this time.
I'm Adam, 36, living in a pretty chill city. My life was all about office work, chill evenings with a beer and some movies, nothing fancy. But then, everything flipped overnight. I can still remember the freezing air, the wind whipping through every corner of the street, making everything feel gloomy and blurry. I was driving home after a long day at work. The car clock was pushing midnight, and all I wanted was to get home, take a shower, and crash. Out of nowhere, while driving down this empty street, I saw a woman on the side of the road, waving like she needed help. She was drenched from the rain. Her hands were freezing, like she'd been standing there for ages. I slowed down and pulled over. I felt bad for her. I couldn't just ignore a woman who obviously needed help. When the car stopped, she came over, struggling to walk in the rain, her eyes looking at me all sad. In the dim light from the sign, I could see her face better, maybe in her 30s. Her skin was pale, her eyes looked tired, and her long hair was all wet, sticking to her forehead, all wrinkled from the rain. She was wearing an old, thick coat, wrapped tightly around her skinny body, her hands still shaking as she pressed against the car window. I quickly opened the car door and rolled down the window a bit, telling her to hop in fast. She said thanks in a tired voice and sat in the passenger seat. She didn't answer any of my questions, just nodded a little, her eyes glued to the window the whole time. I asked for her address, but she just told me to keep going straight. After a bit, I stopped at a gas station to grab some gas and water, and before I left, I asked if she wanted a cup of tea or something warm. She kept staring out the window and didn't answer, like she was too tired to say anything. I finished pumping gas, grabbed a bottle of water, and even got a cup of hot cocoa, then turned around. But when I opened the car door and looked inside, she was gone. There was a small puddle of water on the seat, like she had just gotten up and left. At the time, I didn't think anything was too weird. I just thought the rain had stopped and she didn't need to keep riding with me. I got back in the car, started it up, and drove home. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and wide awake. I grabbed the keys and headed to the garage to go to the store and grab food for the week. As soon as I sat in the driver's seat and bent down to buckle my seatbelt, my body suddenly felt all stiff and out of it. I slowly turned to look at the back seat, my heart racing, and a wave of fear hit me right away. At the spot where the woman had sat last night, there was no puddle of water as I thought, but a pool of dried blood. The dark red had started to dry and stick to the seat, making a creepy stain. I sat there, eyes wide, my mind racing. How could this be? I clearly remembered that nothing weird happened in the car last night. No strange noises, no odd behavior from her. I was so confused, not sure if she was hurt or not, but with how big the stain was, the wound had to be pretty bad. I went back inside and decided to have breakfast first. I mean, I did a good deed, and if the girl left without saying anything, that was on her. I decided I'd have breakfast first, then go clean the car. While I was eating breakfast, I turned on the TV, and then the sandwich got stuck in my throat when I heard the news. In breaking news, Marlene Nelson, the woman who has been missing for a month, was spotted for the first time last night. Highway camera footage shows what appears to be Marlene getting into a black Toyota Camry. Authorities are currently working to identify the owner of the vehicle as part of their ongoing investigation. I called the police right away, and they were at my house 15 minutes later. They asked about the woman from last night and wanted me to confirm if it was Marlene Nelson. I confirmed it was her. I could still clearly remember her face. The police said the highway security cam caught her getting into my car. After that, Marlene Nelson didn't show up on any of the cameras again, like she just vanished. My eyes went wide. I couldn't believe what was going on. After I told them about the blood in the car this morning, the police asked to search it. I agreed right away. No reason to hide anything. I hadn't done anything wrong. Still, the anxiety and tension inside me wouldn't go away. It felt like I was getting caught up in some weird situation I couldn't explain. The police started taking blood samples from the passenger seat to test. When a police opened the trunk, I didn't dare look inside right away. But then, he froze, and the whole place went silent, with only the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. He bent down to take a look, then stared up at me with a horrified look on his face. Suddenly, I got a chill down my spine. I took slow steps toward the trunk. My legs felt like they were gonna give out, but I couldn't stop. I bent down and looked inside, and what I saw was unbelievable. The body of the woman from last night, the girl I'd given a ride to, was lying there quietly with no signs of resistance, like she'd been lying there, just waiting quietly for a long time. Her hair, still wet, was as matted as it was last night, but now the bloodstains on her pale skin made my throat tighten. I looked up at the police, but they didn't say anything, just stared at me with silence and suspicion. Questions kept racing through my head, but I couldn't answer any of them. My life totally changed from that moment on. My work relationship started to fall apart. My co-workers got distant, avoiding me like I was some kind of threat. I wasn't the Adam they knew anymore, just a suspect in some weird case. Outside of work, my personal relationships took a huge hit too. My friends slowly started pulling away from me. They didn't say anything, but I could feel the change in their eyes, in the way they talked to me. It was honestly a really painful feeling. And then, for the next week, I mostly worked with the police, answering questions and giving them all the info they needed. Each time, I felt like I was the one on trial, even though I didn't have anything to hide. The tension, exhaustion, and fear felt like this storm that just wouldn't let up, making it impossible for me to chill or feel any peace. Every day I woke up felt like a fight with myself, full of questions I couldn't answer. In the end, the police said I was innocent. The forensic team found a bunch of stimulants in Marlene's system, and her injuries were probably from her losing control. They didn't find any trace of me on her, or any signs of a fight or attack. Part of me felt relieved, but the rest of me still felt empty, like I couldn't shake the fear. I sold my car, moved to a whole new city where nobody knew me, and started over. I never thought being kind would end up turning my life upside down. I am David, 28 years old. I was born into a wealthy family, where everything seemed to be within reach: money, fame, and even women. I never had to chase after anyone. They always came to me. My relationships never lasted more than a month. I'm not a bad person. I just never met anyone special enough to keep in my life. Until I met Maya. She wasn't extraordinary. From her edited appearance, it wasn't hard for me to tell that, and her way of speaking was quite ordinary as well. One strange thing about her face: her eyes, a mix of gray and blue, blended in a way that was hard to understand, making it impossible for me to look away. What's more, the way she rejected every attempt I made to approach her. Maya was different. It was as if she knew everything about me, from my hobbies and habits to the stories I had never told anyone. Whenever I asked why, she would just smile and say it was a lucky guess. Instead of feeling disturbed, I was drawn in. She was the only one who wasn't easily within my control. She was like a maze. The more I tried to find an exit, the deeper I got lost. That Valentine's Day, I managed to get a date with Maya. For the first time in my life, I was truly serious about a relationship. I wanted Maya to know that I had changed because of her. I don't know when exactly I started to fall in love with her. This love goes beyond the desire to conquer. It was like a kind of magic, an invisible force that I couldn't resist. Maya was the only thing I thought about every day, and I decided that I had to have her. The restaurant was booked a week in advance, a luxurious, cozy place with soft golden lighting. Our table was in a quiet corner, with a large bouquet of roses and 2 glasses of wine on it. Maya arrived, still with her usual gentle demeanor. The long black dress hugged her body, her soft hair cascading down her shoulders, and her lips were lightly tinted with a wine-red color. Throughout the dinner, we talked and laughed together. I felt happier and more at ease than ever before. When the dessert was brought to the table, I nervously looked at Maya. On the white porcelain plate, the words were written in bold chocolate: "Will you be my girlfriend?" She saw it without showing any surprise. Maya smiled, her eyes full of meaning. Maya opened her handbag, took out a small blue gift box and pushed it toward me. I held the gift, feeling a mix of excitement and curiosity. When I opened it, inside was a stack of photos tied together with a red ribbon. The first photo was of Maya, radiant and beautiful. But the following photos made me freeze. They were photos documenting her plastic surgery process. The photos were arranged in reverse chronological order, each step, each process being revealed. Layer by layer, her face transformed, revealing a terrifying truth. In the last photo, I was speechless. It was Maggie, a shy girl who had stood in front of me at university, holding a love letter. I remember that day very clearly. Maggie with her frizzy hair, wearing messy clothes, and her awkward posture. I had laughed at her innocence, even teasing her loudly in front of the crowd. Have you ever looked at yourself with those strange, dull gray eyes? My heart felt like it was being squeezed by someone. I didn't know whether to call her Maya or Maggie anymore. Her gaze no longer held that gentle look. It was a cold, calculating look. Maya continued by placing another gift box down, larger than the one with the photos. It was carefully wrapped in glossy red paper with a golden ribbon tied on top. I stared at the box. All my senses were screaming that something was wrong, but my hands felt compelled to open it. My heart pounded as I untied the ribbon. Beneath the wrapping paper was a heavy, solid wooden box. I slowly lifted the lid of the box, and a strong chemical smell immediately wafted up, causing me to instinctively step back. As I looked inside, I felt like all the air in my lungs was being drained. Inside the box was an eye, preserved in a jar of chemical solution, still intact with an unusual gray color. A small piece of paper lay at the bottom of the box, with scrawled writing in red ink. This is one of the things Maggie had to sacrifice to become the person you love. Not stopping there, Maya reached for the fake blue eye and placed it on the table. I felt frozen. Everything around me seemed to stop, leaving only me and the horrifying image in front of me. Her right eye socket was empty, dark and deep, like an endless abyss, pulling all the light and reason from me into it. A wave of intense nausea surged in my throat, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene before me. My head buzzed, fragmented memories of Maggie flooding back, each image pushing me deeper into a panic. My whole body trembled, my limbs cold as ice. Before, I had never considered the pain or effort someone must endure to change themselves. But now, in the most ruthless way, Maya had forced me to face it. A chilling sensation washed over me as I thought about this. Every part of Maggie's body, altered, replaced to create a perfect version that I had been captivated by. And now, she was gifting me a piece of the truth, the most haunting gift I had ever received. I left the restaurant, but the sense of horror didn't fade in the slightest. The eerie, triumphant laugh of Maya echoed behind me. Since that day, I have been haunted by the gray eyes, always watching me no matter where I go. Perhaps that is exactly what Maggie wanted. Not a bloody revenge, but a reminder that I could never forget her and the pain I had caused. And that was the price I had to pay. My name's Karen, and I'm a senior studying sociology. After school, I usually babysit to help cover my living expenses. Mary, a single mom, hired me and paid pretty well. Her place is a cozy 2-story house out in the Boston suburbs. Inside, it's got that warm, homey vibe, family pictures on the walls, little toys scattered all over the living room, and a faint smell of oak from the fireplace. Ellie, 5 years old with blonde hair and bright blue eyes, was zipping around the room, her giggles making the freezing winter outside feel far away. At 10, I told Ellie a bedtime story before she drifted off. Her mom, Mary, got home right on time, like always. She gave me a kind smile, said thanks, and waved as I headed out. Back at my apartment, I suddenly realized I had left my textbook on Mary's couch. With a big paper due soon, I couldn't just leave it behind, so I decided to go back, even though it was already pretty late. The street looked totally different at that moment. It was dead quiet. The streetlights flickered on and off, and the tree shadows swayed in the dim glow, making everything feel even creepier. I stopped in front of the Parkers' house. The lights were off inside, except for a faint glow from a nightlight upstairs. As soon as I stepped in, I knew something was off. The air felt colder than usual, heavy and still, so quiet I could hear my own footsteps on the wooden floor. Near the door, melted snow and muddy footprints were smeared across the carpet, probably from Mary's boots. Just as I turned around with my book in hand, I caught a glimpse of a figure moving past the second-floor window. My heart started racing, my fingers tightening around the book like it could somehow protect me. Back in the car, my phone lit up with a call from Mary's number. Her voice was shaky and weak.
Karen, are you still here?
I quickly told her I'd just come back to grab my book.
You shouldn't have come in.
The line suddenly cut out. Mary's voice was barely a whisper before the call dropped. I sat frozen in the car, my stomach twisting with worry for Ellie. I decided to call the police. While waiting for them to show up, I stepped out scanning the windows. Footprints in the snow led straight from the backyard to Ellie's window. The police got there fast, moving in toward the house. Through the dim glow from Ellie's room, I could see him, a tall guy holding a rifle, creeping from corner to corner. Mary was tied to a chair, her mouth gagged. Ellie sat on her mom's lap, her face red and puffy from crying, tiny hands clinging to Mary's neck. I had to look away when I saw their terrified eyes. The police surrounded the house. A SWAT team geared up and moved toward the back door, while the team leader got on a loudspeaker, stalling for time. The guy inside didn't waste any time. He shouted his demands: car, cash, a clean getaway. If they didn't give him what he wanted, he'd start with Ellie first. I gasped, my mind spinning. My heart nearly stopped when I saw him yank Ellie away from Mary, the gun aimed right at her. Inside, Mary was signaling with her hands. The guy wasn't paying attention then. Out of nowhere, Mary launched herself forward, shoving the chair at him. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough to throw him off balance. He spun around, gun now pointed straight at Mary. A loud bang, a flash of light. Mary's scream cut through the night, sending a chill through everyone. I shouted in the patrol car, "They need help. Please, do something." Then all hell broke loose. The SWAT team stormed in, smashing through the ground floor window, bursting through the back door, tossing flashbang into the living room. Gunshots rang out, screams, Ellie's wails cutting through the chaos. The guy stumbled through the smoke, clutching Ellie tight, yanking her in front of him like a human shield. He was yelling non-stop, gunfire erupting wildly, bullets flying in every direction. Then a bullet hit his hand. His grip loosened. The gun clattered to the floor. An officer rushed in, tackled him to the ground, and cuffed him while another officer carried Ellie out. I ran over, nearly tripping as I grabbed Ellie and pulled her into my arms. She was sobbing, her little cries cutting through the silence now that everything was over. At the police station, I sat next to Mary while they patched her up before taking her to the hospital. Ellie wouldn't let go of me, clinging to my arm, still crying. The guy didn't look scared at all. If anything, his expression sent a chill down my spine. He smirked, eyes full of mockery as he stared at Mary and her mom through the glass partition. After hours of questioning and investigation, the truth finally came out. Turns out, he used to work for the company that maintained the Parkers family security system. He'd been watching them for months. That wasn't his first time pulling off a robbery like this. He even admitted he regretted not being more careful, said he should have taken me too. Mary's call was him forcing her to stage a fake scene, hoping it'd keep her and Ellie safe. A chill ran down my spine when I realized just how close I'd been to pure evil. What if I hadn't come back that night? Mary had to have surgery and would need weeks to recover. I stayed at the Parker's house to help take care of Ellie, but things weren't the same anymore. Ellie jumped at every loud noise. Every night she needed me or Mary beside her just to fall asleep. I couldn't shake the memories either. Mary getting shot, Ellie's cries, the cold, empty look in that guy's eyes, it all kept replaying in my head. I tried to push it away, but some nights I'd jolt awake from nightmares. One day, as light snow started falling, I stood by the window, watching the flakes drift down. Ellie came over and tugged my hand. For the first time in weeks, she smiled, really smiled. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered. But I knew the truth. Neither of us would ever forget that night. It was a reminder that even in the safest places, danger can be lurking. And sometimes, it's the tiniest gut feelings that end up saving the things that matter most.
My name is Adam Martinez. I have been a school bus driver for 14 years. I'm 44 and live with my wife. Our only son is studying abroad in France. I love my job. The kids' smiles, their innocent eyes, and their curious questions make it all worth it. I set aside a little bit of my salary to buy school supplies, even though my pay isn't that high. Rulers, pencils, crayons, notebooks, and so on. I'll give the kids those gifts on the first day of the new school year. Or, in case of kids enrolling late, I'll use them as gifts to motivate them to study. One day, I got word from the school that they were getting a new kid named Jason, who's 10 years old. According to the homeroom teacher, Miss Karen Taylor, Jason has a pretty unique family situation. I put together a set of paints in a school bag, just the basic, affordable kind. I'd let Jason pick which he liked for the two gifts. I hoped Jason would adjust to the new environment quickly. I stopped the bus in front of Jason's house, which was the last pickup point before I took the kids to school. The small house looked pretty run down and was still a bit messy with leaves on the porch. Jason's family probably hadn't had a chance to clean it all up yet. After about 5 minutes of waiting, the house was still quiet and Jason didn't come out. The other kids on the bus started to get noisy. "Mr. Martinez, we're going to be late for school." Maddie, an 8-year-old girl who's pretty sharp, reminded me. I told the kids to quiet down and drove away. So Jason didn't make it to school on the first day. I let Karen, the homeroom teacher, know. For some reason, I felt like I should keep an extra eye on this boy Jason. Even though I'm not a teacher, I know I'm still part of the education system. The next day, I picked up Jason. He was a skinny boy, much smaller than you'd expect for his age, sitting in front of his house waiting for the bus. Jason looked back at the house, waved goodbye, and then ran toward the bus. The boy stood at the bus door, looking shy and hesitant before getting on. His clothes were messy, with stains that distorted the bear's face printed on them. The clothes didn't even fit him. They were too short. Immediately, I noticed a pretty unpleasant smell. I wasn't sure where it was coming from, but everything had been normal before Jason arrived. "Hey Jason, welcome to your new school. I'm Adam Martinez." I smiled at him and tried not to let the unpleasant smell affect my expression. "Didn't you take a shower before coming to school?" Maddie, the little girl, said in a choked voice, her hands covering her nose and her eyes showing annoyance. The other kids shouted the same as Maddie. I reminded everyone to keep it down and handed the two gifts I had prepared to Jason. "Pick the one you like." Jason lowered his head, shook it, and walked straight to the back of the bus. That was really heartbreaking to see. Karen and I talked about the boy again. She said she'd find a way to remind Jason about personal hygiene. In the afternoon, after school ended, Jason was still sitting quietly in the back row, staring out the window with a sad look. I'm not sure if he heard his friend's comments or if he was just trying to ignore them. The next day, Jason showed up at school in the same clothes as the day before, and that unpleasant smell was still there. I felt really sorry, but I have to say it smelled like a decaying animal carcass. Yesterday, the teacher reminded you to stay clean. I tried to keep my cool despite the hurtful comments from some of the kids. Jason stayed in the same spot and stayed quiet. After school in the afternoon, I parked in front of Jason's house and waited for a while. The house looked gloomy and dark. It didn't seem like a great place for raising a child. At the window, a woman stood there looking at me. I rolled down the car window, waved, and nodded to her. I guess she was Jason's mother. She didn't react, just popped something bright red into her mouth and started chewing. I felt a bit creeped out and decided to drive away. I kept glancing at the house in the rearview mirror, really wanting to find out more about Jason. The next day was the weekend, so I drove over to Jason's house with a school bag, some pencils, and 2 new sets of clothes. I knocked on the door, and on the 3rd try, it opened. The woman from yesterday was standing there with a really resentful and unpleasant expression. Her hands and the corners of her mouth were a light red, almost like dried blood. "Hello, I'm Jason's school bus driver." The woman's expression didn't change. I glanced inside the house after catching a strong, fishy smell. The furniture was all messed up, and there was something on the floor I couldn't quite make out. The woman suddenly slammed the door, and I was so surprised I didn't know how to react. I left the backpack with the pencils and clothes inside and walked away. The next Monday morning, I picked Jason up and saw he was wearing the clothes I gave him, and they fit perfectly. Jason looked a lot fresher, but as soon as he got into the car, the stench was still there, and even worse. "Are you still not showering before school?" The kids were really upset, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. Karen and I decided to visit his house that evening. While she knocked on the main door, I walked around to take a look. Through the window, I was stunned to see Jason with his face and new clothes covered in blood and his arms covered in deep scratches. Jason stared at a hidden corner I couldn't see, looking vacant and exhausted. The slurping sound was like some poor little animal was being ripped apart. When Jason saw me through the window, he looked really panicked and quickly ran toward the hidden corner. Immediately told Miss Karen to call the police, while I kept banging on the door and calling out to Jason. The police showed up and quickly broke the door lock. The scene inside the house was so disturbing that it made everyone who saw it shudder. Karen vomited and collapsed. Scattered around the house were torn toads, frogs, chickens, and other small parts like nails, feet, and so on. Jason stood with his arms outstretched in front of him, while a woman was munching on a toad in the corner. The police quickly restrained her, and Jason rushed over to hug the woman tightly, begging everyone not to hurt his mother. That was Jason's mother. She was on drugs and had gone insane. Jason and his mother's life had been extremely miserable with a cruel husband and father. The mother and son moved here with the help of an acquaintance. Because of a life filled with unhappiness and pain, Jason's mother couldn't stay strong and did drugs. Jason wasn't taken care of properly. His body was covered with countless sores and infections. That's why his body always had an unpleasant smell. After everything was sorted out at the police station, Karen burst into tears and hugged Jason. She temporarily adopted Jason, while his mother was taken care of and treated at the local hospital. I also became more of a friend and companion to Jason, giving him extra love and care. I hope all children in the world get the love and care they need.
I'm Oliver, 23 years old, just graduated from UC Berkeley, California, major in psychology. After a hard-working session, I planned to get some time off for myself, spending it with family, friends, before going to grind out later in work and labor. One day when I was doing web surfing, I came across a job that had the title Guardian of Sleep. That was really intriguing, so I dug deeper. The job was pretty simple according to the brochure. All you gotta do was to call the customers and literally guard their sleep. The customers would pay the guardians by the sessions. The fees were up to their negotiation. It was kinda like a nice job. No need to spend much on travel expenses. All you gotta do was to stay, literally, guarding the other's sleep, plus also able to study your customer's psychology on the field. Awesome! I immediately contacted the organization, signing up for the job as Guardian of Sleep. They added me into the list. All I gotta do was to leave my contact information. The customers would then make the contact soon. Maybe graduating in psychology was truly a bonus, because I soon received some early customers. It was kinda easy as it should, once I passed the assigned time and pricing. It did mess up my schedule a little bit, working in graveyard shift. So I would spend my daytime sleeping and resting, spending the nighttime for guardian work. Most of my customers were the elderly, living alone. They often have what I deemed loneliness syndrome, that affecting their sleep. Especially when you add in the amount of urination those elderly had to do, you get the point I'm talking about. A few weeks in, the work ran pretty smooth. I had built a personal network of acquaintances myself. I got quite a lot of money for someone who just graduated. At the time, I was compiling a sleep study based on my customers' sleeping patterns. That evening, when it's close to midnight, I received a text from a strange number. That person requested my assistance in their sleep guardian now. Since I had an empty schedule on that date, I immediately agreed. And then that number, after some time, FaceTime called me. In front of me was a young woman. She's crying hard and seemed to be in great distress. Took me a few seconds to settle, where I greeted her politely. The young woman was still crying for a while after that. I had to stay silent until she calmed down completely, which took about 20 minutes. The young woman introduced herself as Sophie. Due to protocol, I wasn't allowed to ask any further information, as well as the reasons for her distress. My job was only guarding her sleep, so I talked a bit to make her feel better. After some time, Sophie laid down on her bed, covered herself in the blanket, and said nothing else. She just kept her eyes opened, fixated to the ceiling all night long. At 7 a.m., I announced that my shift had ended, saying farewell to Sophie and prepared to leave. Still fixed on the lying position, she opened up to me, still in a monotonous voice.
I want to schedule a long-term deal with you, to guard my sleep every night.
The proposal took me by surprise, yet I agreed after a short while to consider. After all, the deal was still good, since I would have the psychological profile of a new, peculiar young candidate. Even though I was intrigued by Sophie's actions, however, I respected the privacy protection terms, and therefore would not discuss any further. That evening, Sophie called me very early, at around 8 p.m. She said she needed someone to talk to. She was afraid of the emptiness and darkness of the household. Taking a look at Sophie's bedroom, I guess she was pretty financially stable, so I asked her information about her age to give out the best advices for the quality of sleep. Yet she deflected the questions away, instead focusing on other topics. Once again, at 12 o'clock sharp, she lay down on the mattress and again slept with her eyes open. It occurred days after days where she would remain fixed on one position until daybreak. Her calls to me went earlier and earlier as the days went by. Sometimes I received her call right at sunset.
I'll pay you more. Just watch me from sunset to sunrise. And keep an eye on me at all time, please. Not 1 second.
I felt her mental state deteriorated day after days. One evening, I was dead tired since I was too busy to sleep in the daytime. At around 11 p.m., I began yawning constantly, with the fatigue set in quickly and heavily. At midnight, when Sophie went to sleep, the silence, combined with the sleep deprivation, finally knocked me out completely. I didn't know for how long had I been sleeping. I just knew that this sleep was the best one I had in a long time, enough for me to detach myself completely from reality. Until a sudden noise jolted me up from sleep. It came from my still opening iPad. After a minute of scrambling, I suddenly realized that I still needed to watch over Sophie. I quickly grabbed the iPad, which was showing the scene of her bedroom ceiling. It looked like her mobile device had been impacted sometime when I fell asleep. I was hesitant to tell her my apology for falling asleep. I was afraid I might disrupt her quiet environment. A few seconds later, it looked like Sophie's phone went back to being steady again. However, instead of Sophie, it was a person dressed in black. His face was concealed underneath a face sticker mask. However, his build was definitely a man. After a few seconds, I greeted him, but he didn't seem to respond. I asked whether he knew Sophie and what he was doing there in her room. The man remained silent, yet the sticker face seemed to have some shift in its wrinkles, and I was sure he was smirking. Sophie's hand suddenly appeared on the screen, waving at me. I guess that meant she told me that everything's okay. That man must have been someone she knew, and it seemed they were having some fun. However, Sophie's hand rose up further, and the man's hand holding it was soaked red with blood. No, to be exact, Sophie's severed hand that completely been detached from her arms. What the hell was going on? I asked myself frantically, not sure what I was witnessing and whether it was all of a prank or something that was happening for real. The man raised his hand, and another of Sophie's severed hand went up, waving at me. My heart beat up like crazy while I was paralyzed at the scene. That man seemed to be very excited at my expulsion. His bloodied hands meant something very, very terrible just happened with Sophia, and that very hand seemed to pull the camera down to the floor. I couldn't blink, my eyes glued toward his every movement. A stream of blood oozed down from his hand over the camera, smearing the screen in a blood-red filter. Sophie's black hair rose up on the screen, slowly revealing her bloodied face. She had both her eyes closed, and there was a lot of blood flowing from her neck down to her cheeks from the upside-down position. The man stopped at the almost severed neck of my client, then laughed aloud ecstatically. I shivered at the sight. What I witnessed there was so fucking surreal that it wasn't an impulsive act of anger in a robbery gone wrong. No, it seemed like a work of the devil. FaceTime connection suddenly went blank, snapped me from the trance I was at. Frantically dialed 911. I told the police about the murder scene I had witnessed, but when pressed further from the police, I knew only that the victim name was Sophie. Since the calls came from untraceable number, I couldn't recontact her again. Months of work with the police investigation, and we couldn't figure out where or even who Sophie was. The incident left me with a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I had to undergo psychiatric treatments. I couldn't bring myself to use any type of mobile devices with video features for almost 2 years. I had witnessed a serious murder right there at the screen. But the thing was, there wasn't any trace of Sophie or any reports nationwide, and we didn't even know who Sophie was at all. To that day, I sometimes wondering about the things that happened, on whether it was real or all just a dream. Whether that device from Sophie would ever contact me once again. Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. I know many of you choose these videos to relax and easily drift off to sleep. Before you slip into your dreams, could you do me a small favor? Leave a quick interaction and let us know where you're watching this and at what time. Now, let's begin tonight's horror stories. I'm Kate, 22 years old, and I'm a senior at Ohio State. My boyfriend Alden is a year older than me. He's a mechanic at a small garage outside of town. We've been together for almost 2 years now. That day, Alden picked me up after class. We grabbed dinner at a restaurant in the city, then went to a late movie. After the movie, Alden drove me home. I was in the passenger seat, looking out the window. On both sides of the road were endless corn and soybean fields. The car's headlights lit up the empty lane. Every now and then, a car or two would zoom past us in the opposite direction. "We're almost out of gas," Alden said, looking at the fuel gauge. The needle was almost touching the red line. I checked the GPS on my phone. "We're still 20 minutes from your place. I don't think we'll make it home. We need to find a gas station nearby." He said, "I think I saw a gas station around here once when I was driving through." This was an area I'd never been to before. The road was narrow, with dense woods on both sides. The houses were sparse, hundreds of yards apart. The air in the car grew silent. I felt a little uneasy looking out the window. The dark shadows from the trees seemed to move with the car. "Is this place really out of the way?" I asked. He'd only been on this road once too. After about 5 minutes of driving on the deserted road, we saw a faint light ahead. A gas station sign appeared. It was a small gas station with 2 pumps in front of a convenience store. There wasn't a soul in sight. "Is this place even open?" I looked around. The pumps are still lit up. It should be fine. Alden pulled in, stopping at pump number 2. When the engine turned off, we were surrounded by absolute silence. I glanced around and suddenly shivered. "This place feels a little creepy," I whispered. "Let's just get gas and go. You wait in the car for me, okay?" Alden closed the car door softly. I sat in the car, watching Alden. He was pumping gas and looking at his phone. In the rearview mirror, I saw a white car. It was driving very slowly, approaching the gas station, then stopped about 30 feet from us. Alden was looking at his phone, completely oblivious to the car that had just appeared. The headlights of the car behind us were still on, so I couldn't see clearly who was inside. A few more minutes passed. The white car didn't turn off its engine, and no one got out. I felt strange. Are they not planning to get gas? The white car suddenly backed up a little. Maybe they're thinking about it and decided not to get gas, I thought. The dark outline of a person sitting in the driver's seat appeared. The person sat still, seemingly looking towards Alden. The driver's side window slowly rolled down. A hand reached out. In the hand was something black. I squinted to see more clearly. A black handgun. My eyes widened as much as they could. My mouth fell open. My hands trembled, dropping my phone onto the car floor. The gun slowly pointed towards Alden. My whole body froze, a finger on the trigger. "Alden, look out!" My voice shattered the silence. Alden jumped, turning his head to look at me, a very surprised look on his face. The person in the white car heard me scream. The gun disappeared back into the car in a flash. The car door immediately closed. Alden stood there looking at me, not understanding what was happening. "Kate? What's wrong?" The white car suddenly made a sharp U-turn. The tires screeched loudly against the pavement, creating a piercing sound. The car sped up, driving very fast towards the main road. The red taillights grew smaller and then disappeared completely. I sat in the car, shaking uncontrollably. My heart was pounding so fast, I thought it would jump out of my chest. My breath was shallow, and my hands were drenched in sweat. Alden pulled the gas nozzle out, closed the gas cap, and then ran over to me. He opened the car door. "What's wrong with you? What happened?" I looked at him, my eyes filled with tears. "Alden, didn't you see? That white car? What white car? Alden looked in the direction of the road. There was a white car parked right there. The person in the car, he had a gun, Alden. Alden looked at me as if he didn't believe me. A gun? He was holding a gun pointed right at you. I saw it very clearly. Alden looked around one more time. The road was completely deserted. Alden was silent for a moment, then quickly finished filling the tank and drove away as fast as he could. I kept checking the rearview mirror, afraid the white car would appear and chase us. Kate, are you sure you saw a gun? Absolutely, Alden. If I hadn't yelled, you would have... I couldn't finish my sentence. Alden drove really fast. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. When we got home, we parked in the garage and locked the doors carefully. I said we had to call the police immediately, but Alden strongly disagreed. If we call the police without evidence, they'll think we're making it up. Just forget about it. I was surprised by Alden's attitude, but I didn't want to make a bigger deal out of it either. A week later, while helping Alden clean up, I accidentally found an old photo box at the bottom of a closet. In it were pictures of him with a group of tough-looking people, their arms covered in tattoos and strange symbols. When I asked about the photos, Alden just said they were old friends and quickly put them away. That night, I couldn't sleep no matter how hard I tried. The image of the gun haunted me, but it was Alden's strange behavior that unsettled me the most. Those photos kept flashing through my mind. I quietly started to find out. Through social media, I tracked down a few faces from the pictures. One was serving time for arms trafficking. Another had mysteriously disappeared last year. Every time I brought it up, Alden either brushed me off or snapped at me. The next morning, I left him a note that read, "Don't come looking for me." I decided to get out of town. I didn't know the full truth, but one thing was clear. If I stayed any longer, I might never get the chance to leave. I thought it would be just another normal shift. But then, from the back seat of that old car, I saw a small hand pressed against the window. Just a few minutes later, the man drove straight into the gas station to kill me. I'm Sean, 30 years old. I've been working at the Chevron DTC gas station on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado for 2 years now. My night shift starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 6 a.m. the next morning. Last Thursday night started like any other. I was sitting behind the counter, reading a book and sipping my coffee. The clock on the wall showed midnight. Outside, the green neon light of the sign illuminated the empty parking lot. The highway wasn't far, and I could hear cars whizzing by occasionally. A little while later, I heard an engine approaching. A gray car rolled into the station. The car looked pretty old, with paint peeling in many places, and the left headlight seemed a bit dim. The driver was a man in his 40s, with long, thinning brown hair and a thick beard. He parked at pump number 3, got out of the car, and opened the gas cap. What caught my attention was how he kept looking around cautiously. His hand trembled slightly as he held the gas nozzle. I went back to my book. Staring at someone for too long is rude, but I did the opposite of what I thought. After just a few seconds of looking at my book, I looked up at him again. This time, I saw a small movement in the back seat of the car. At first, I thought it was a reflection, but then I saw it more clearly. It was a small hand of a child, pressed against the back window. The hand only appeared for a few seconds before disappearing. It must be a small child with an adult, was my first thought. But the man's attitude made me get up to observe more closely. He was still pumping gas, but he turned back to look into the car, saying something with a sharp tone. The gas pump automatically stopped. The man hung up the nozzle and walked towards the store. He pushed open the glass door and walked toward me with a cold demeanor. "That'll be $30, pump number 3. "Yes, sir." I entered the amount into the register. "Do you have a small child in the car?" His eyes suddenly sharpened. "Why?" "I saw a kid in the back seat. If you need anything for the child, we have candy and sodas. None of your business. Just ring it up. His reaction wasn't like a normal father who would smile and talk about his child. Cash or card? I tried to keep my voice calm. Cash. He pulled out a wad of crumpled bills from his back pocket. I took the money, deliberately counting slowly. Is there a problem with the pump? I need to check the receipt printer. No receipt needed. Just give me the change. Company policy. I have to print a receipt for every transaction. Hurry up! I bent down as if fixing the printer, but I was actually pulling my cell phone out of my pocket. I dialed 911 without looking, hoping I hit the right numbers. Sorry, the printer's jammed. It'll be a few more minutes. The man started to get restless. He glanced out the window towards the car. No receipt needed. I have to go now. Just a little longer, sir. I felt the phone in my hand vibrate, a sign the call was connected. I spoke louder than usual. Chevron DTC gas station in suburban Denver. I suspect a child abduction. The man suddenly realized what I was doing. His face went pale. You bastard. He reached over the counter to snatch the phone, but I managed to pull back. The police are coming! I yelled. He didn't say anything else, turned his back, and ran outside. I heard the car engine start. Through the glass, I saw him jump into the car and hit the gas. But instead of driving straight onto the road, he backed up, then slammed directly into the store. I jumped to the side as the Honda crashed into the glass door. The glass shattered loudly, pieces flying everywhere. The store's alarm blared, then went silent. The front of the car was deep inside the store, knocking over shelves of candy. I lay behind the counter, feeling blood from a few small cuts on my hands. The man yelled from inside the car, "I'll kill you!" But the car's engine had died. He tried to restart it, but the car wouldn't turn over. Police sirens blared in the distance, getting closer and closer. He opened the car door and ran out. I saw him through the gap between the fallen shelves. He ran towards the back of the store, but I knew there was only a dumpster and a high fence back there. He wouldn't be able to get away. 2 police cars pulled up right in front of the store. 4 officers jumped out, guns drawn. "Police! Freeze!" I crawled out from behind the counter, ran outside, and yelled, "He went out back!" 2 officers chased after the man. The other 2 approached the Honda that had crashed into the store. "There's a child in here," an officer called out. Through the shattered window of the car, I saw a boy about 10 years old, his mouth taped shut, in a state of extreme panic. The police carefully opened the car door. "It's okay, kiddo. You're safe now." The other 2 officers returned, escorting the man who was now handcuffed. He saw me and tried to lunge like a wild animal wanting to tear its prey apart. An ambulance arrived to check on the boy and bandage the cuts on my hand. Crime scene investigators began taking photos and collecting evidence. A male officer approached me. "You did a great job tonight. That boy might not have made it if it weren't for you." The boy was Tyler. He had been missing for 3 days after playing in a park near his home. I looked towards Tyler, who was being attended to by paramedics. Luckily, he wasn't injured. Tyler was still scared, but no longer crying, and his parents were on their way. I felt a shiver, but also a sense of relief that I had done the right thing. 2 hours later, Tyler's parents arrived and took him home. The boy hugged his parents tightly, sobbing. Before leaving, Tyler's parents brought him over to me. "Thank you so much," the boy said, then hugged me. I didn't know what to say, so I hugged Tyler back and gave him a piece of candy. My hands were still trembling from the whole ordeal. It was lucky that I trusted my gut. It has been weeks, but that night still lingers in my mind as if it just happened yesterday. I still remember the cold, exhausting feeling as I drove down Highway 61. But what I can't forget is that man. I never imagined that what seemed like an ordinary encounter would turn out to be the beginning of a nightmare. The gas light came on. I only had enough gas for about 10 more miles. My phone's map showed only one gas station about 11 miles away. I hoped I had enough fuel to make the trip. 10 minutes later, I saw a faint light ahead, and an old gas station appeared. I pulled up to a pump, swiped my credit card, started pumping gas, and looked around. Besides my car, there was an old, dark blue pickup truck parked in the corner of the station, mostly hidden by the shadows. That's when I noticed a figure standing near the blue truck, a tall man wearing a dark jacket. I tried to act normal, focusing on pumping gas, but my heart started pounding. The shadowy figure started moving toward me, slowly, step by step. I could hear his shoes crunching on the gravel. The gas nozzle wasn't even full yet, but all I wanted to do was jump in my car and speed away immediately. "Good evening, friend." The man's voice was deep and hoarse. He stepped into the light, his face long and gaunt, with stubble and deep-set eyes under the brim of his hat. "Are you driving alone?" I nodded, not wanting to talk, but also not wanting to seem scared. "Yeah, I'm heading home. My car broke down. I need to get to Millfield. It's only about 30 miles from here. Could you give me a ride?" I looked at him, trying to size him up. He was half a head taller than me, with broad shoulders and large hands. There was something bulging in his jacket pocket, and I didn't want to know what it was. "Sorry, I'm not going through Millfield. I'm going the other way." The man's smile disappeared. "Millfield is on Highway 61. You're on this road. I'm turning off at the next intersection." The man was silent for a moment, his eyes staring intently at me. "There's no intersection ahead. You're lying." The gas nozzle had stopped. I slowly removed the nozzle from my car, closed the gas cap, not taking my eyes off him. "I really need to get to Millfield tonight. It's important." "Just a short ride." The man took another step toward me. I shook my head, moving towards my car door. "I can't. Sorry." He reached into his jacket pocket, but instead of pulling out something dangerous, he pulled out a wad of cash. "I'll pay you $200, just for 30 miles. "No thanks." I opened my car door, quickly sliding into the driver's seat. He put his hand on my car door, stopping me from closing it. $500. "Buddy, I really need help." "I'm really sorry, sir," I said, trying to pull the door shut. The man wouldn't let go. Instead, he leaned down, his face just inches from mine. The smell of whiskey and cigarettes wafted from his breath. "Listen, I don't want any trouble, but I have to get to Millfield tonight. Understand?" I was about to answer when another pair of headlights shone into the gas station. A police patrol car slowly pulled in. The man immediately let go of my car door and backed up a few steps. The police car parked, and an officer got out. The man's demeanor instantly changed. He became relaxed and friendly. "Is there a problem?" the officer asked, his gaze moving between me and the man. "No problem at all, officer. I was just asking for directions to Millfield." The officer nodded, but I noticed he was observing the man closely. "Could I see some ID, sir?" The man hesitated for a second, then said, "I left it in my truck." "Let me get it." He turned his back and walked toward the blue pickup truck. That's when the officer moved closer to me, lowering his voice just enough to be heard. "Are you willing to give him a ride?" I shook my head. "I'm really not going through Millfield." "I see. Better safe than sorry." His eyes quickly shifted towards the truck. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life. The blue pickup truck sped out of the gas station at a crazy speed. I stood there, stunned. He just said his car broke down, and now he was speeding away like nothing was wrong. The officer quickly reported it over his radio, his voice tense as he described the truck and requested backup. He turned back to me, his eyes more serious than ever. I recounted every detail of my encounter with the man. The officer used his radio again, requesting a lookout for the truck, suspecting foul play. For me, he sent another colleague to escort me home to ensure my safety. 2 months passed. Life slowly returned to normal, but I couldn't completely shake the uneasy feeling from that night. One evening, I was watching the news as usual. An image of a familiar face suddenly appeared on the screen, making my blood run cold. Deep-set eyes, a gaunt face, It was exactly the man from the gas station that night. Stuart Welch, 45 years old, serial killer. He murdered 5 victims in 3 years using the same method, faking a broken down car, asking for a ride, then overpowering them and taking them to a remote location. I sat motionless, every detail flooding back. The news anchor continued. He was caught thanks to a report from a lucky witness who escaped 2 months ago. So, I could have been the 6th victim if that police officer hadn't shown up at the right time. If I'd agreed to give him a ride, things might have... I turned off the TV, sitting in silence. I was right to trust my gut feeling that murders often happen in deserted places. I never thought I'd almost become living proof of that statement. Since that night, I've never dared to drive alone on empty roads. I am William, 32 years old. My passion for exploring forgotten places always drives me to seek out mysterious and eerie locations. A few months ago, one night, I stood in front of an abandoned hotel, located lonely at the edge of a forest in a sparsely populated town. The massive building loomed in the darkness, its exterior covered in moss and streaks of cracks stretching like spider webs. The shattered window panes reflected the moonlight, creating distorted, eerie shapes. I gripped the camera tightly, feeling the cold wind brush against my skin, carrying with it the smell of dampness and decay. I had heard the stories surrounding this place, the mournful cries at night, the strange lights flickering on and off, and the inexplicable sounds. All of these things made my heart race, a mix of fear and excitement. I chose the night to fully experience everything, when the darkness would conceal everything, while also revealing the most terrifying things. As I stepped through the half-broken front door, I was immediately overwhelmed by the space inside. The vast lobby was completely silent, filled with darkness. The tattered long curtains swayed with each gust of wind that slipped through the cracks. My flashlight swept over a dusty reception desk, where a notebook, nearly eaten through by termites, lay forgotten. Every step I take echoes through the room, as if about to awaken something sleeping in the dark. I had only taken a few steps when I sensed the presence of something. A shadow flashed briefly at the end of the hallway, too fast for me to make out its shape. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. Is there someone here? I wondered to myself. But the space remained silent, only the sound of the wind blowing through the cracks in the door. I decided to climb the stairs to the upper floor. The old stairs creaked with every step I took. The space here is more suffocating. The air feels heavier and colder. As I reached the middle of the hallway, I heard a faint sound, like a weak cry for help coming from a nearby room. I stepped closer, my hand gripping the flashlight tightly, my breath heavy. The door in front of me was locked, but the sound from inside was clearer, like someone was gently tapping. I placed my hand on the doorknob, ready to open the door, when suddenly, a loud noise echoed from behind me. I startled and turned around, but the hallway was empty. Once again, the shadow flashed by, so fast that I couldn't identify what it was. I turned on the flashlight, sweeping the light everywhere. A sense of confusion began to spread within me, but curiosity urged me to move forward. I turned around, placed my hand on the door, but was immediately interrupted by a loud scream. A figure appeared from the darkness, charging straight toward me. The light from the flashlight illuminated his distorted face. Bloodshot eyes, mouth open wide in a mad hiss, the clothes he wore tattered. I froze for a moment, my body stiff with fear, but instead of running, I tried to signal that I had no intention of harming him. I took a step back, but he advanced closer, his hand raised as if to attack. When I realized he either didn't understand or didn't care about my intentions, I turned and ran. A door behind me suddenly burst open, and a strong force pulled me inside. I fell to the floor, and in front of me was a woman. Her hair was matted, her clothes torn and covered in dirt. Her eyes were darkened, filled with panic and exhaustion. She raised her hand as if pleading for something, but before I could do anything, the screams outside and the pounding on the door sounded like thunder. The door shook violently as each strike of the axe hit it with force. We gathered everything we could to block the door. A cabinet, a few old chairs, but none of it was enough to make us feel safe. I took out my phone, my hand shaking as I called the police, my voice unable to hide the panic. The woman beside me kept pointing at the door, tears streaming down her pale face. She gestured for me not to let him in. The axe struck repeatedly, causing the wooden planks on the door to crack. I heard the distant sound of a police siren, like a faint ray of hope. The person outside seemed to notice it too. The banging stopped, and then I heard footsteps running down the hallway. A few minutes later, the light from the police flashlight shone through the crack in the door. The lunatic was apprehended on the spot, with no chance to escape. The woman and I were taken outside, our legs trembling, unable to stand. The woman's identity was quickly confirmed. She was Mandy Perez, a person who had been reported missing by her family 5 years ago. Her family, despite enduring years of waiting and anguish, never gave up hope of finding her. The identity of the kidnapper was quickly confirmed as Victor Hall, a former hotel employee who had worked here before it was shut down. Victor had an unstable psychological history with a background of substance abuse and violence. When the hotel went bankrupt and closed nearly a decade ago, Victor seemed to become obsessed with the place and chose it as his hiding spot. Here, Mandy was held captive like a prisoner. Victor, in his delusion, created a distorted reality, viewing Mandy as a companion to escape the loneliness in his crazed mind. He gave Mandy no chance to escape and often threatened her if she tried to resist. Mandy had lived in fear for 5 years, enduring both mental and physical torment from Victor. Victor will face a severe sentence, being imprisoned for life in a maximum security prison, ensuring he will never have the chance to harm anyone again. As for me, seeing Mandy reunited with her family, I couldn't help but feel proud for having done the right thing. But the haunting memory of the darkness in that hotel still lingers with me. The images of the dark room, the sound of the axe hitting the door, and the wild look in the madman's eyes often wake me in the middle of the night, my body drenched in sweat. I decided that I could no longer live with those dangerous and haunting experiences. My camera and old equipment were tucked away in a corner, just like how I buried my fascination with exploring creepy places. Instead, I began to find joy in wholesome travels, sunlit paths, vibrant beaches, and peaceful towns with friendly locals.
I'm William, about to enter my senior year at Rice University, Texas. I just moved from the apartment I rented near campus to my house, accepting the fact that I would spend nearly 4 hours every day commuting by bus between home and school, because of a haunting story I went through a month ago. It has kept me living in constant panic and stress. My academic performance has declined, and I've lost nearly 20 pounds. I still clearly remember the excitement I felt when moving into the new apartment. It was an affordable apartment, not spacious, but enough for a college student like me. I've always had a healthy lifestyle and maintained a serious attitude toward my studies. Therefore, having a private space to focus on studying and resting is something I always wished for. Although the rent was cheap and the apartment was nothing special, I felt lucky to find a suitable, quiet, and convenient place. The first days passed very peacefully. I lived in a small apartment, rearranging the space myself to be as neat and comfortable as possible. My daily life is pretty routine. I go to school, come home, cook, and then study until late at night. Everything is going as I planned, a stable, orderly life. One afternoon in the lecture hall, while preparing for the next class,
I asked Richard to watch my backpack for a moment so I could go to the restroom. But the mistake started with me, from trusting a guy who only cared about women too much. After about 10 minutes, I came back to find my backpack gone, while Richard was busy flirting with the girl sitting next to him. In that backpack were all the most important things to me: my wallet, apartment keys, and even my laptop. I panicked. A sense of helplessness overwhelmed me as I realized everything was gone. I had to spend the whole day reporting the lost items, locking my bank accounts, and contacting the landlord to find a way to get back into my apartment. But the truly horrifying events were just beginning. I started entering the final exams and spent most of my time in the apartment studying for the exams. One morning, after waking up and sitting at my study desk following breakfast, I was a bit surprised when I picked up my textbook. On the cover, there was a small sticky note with a handwritten message: "I'm back." I thought maybe someone in my group of friends was playing a prank after hearing about my lost backpack and decided to scare me a little. I didn't think much of it and threw the note away, trying to focus on studying. But the prank didn't stop there. The sticky notes kept appearing. Every day when I came home, I would find a new sticky note with cryptic messages written on it. "You're not alone. I quite like it here." Every time I saw those words, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I asked my friends about the prank, but they all firmly insisted they had nothing to do with it. Still, I reassured myself that this was just a mean-spirited prank from them. I didn't want to overthink it and make myself more anxious. One day, after returning home from a day of studying at the library, I noticed that something felt really off about the apartment. A few items I had left on the desk were gone. My favorite water cup, a few books I hadn't gotten around to reading. I searched everywhere but couldn't find them, and that left me feeling confused. When I went into the kitchen, I froze in shock when I saw that the food in the fridge had been half-eaten and thrown around haphazardly. That was the food I had bought for the entire week. I immediately called the landlord and then reported it to the police. They came to investigate, but there were no clear signs of a break-in. I was certain that there was an intruder, and it was highly likely that he was the same person who had stolen my backpack 2 weeks ago. He wanted to disrupt my life, or was there something else he wanted? I couldn't sleep after that night. Every small sound in the apartment made me jump, my heart racing wildly. I felt no longer safe, as if every wall around me had become fragile, unable to protect me anymore. The next day, I suggested to the landlord that we change the locks and install cameras. He was very kind, and everything was taken care of that morning. But that still wasn't enough to make me feel at ease. Every time I entered the house, I felt as if someone was watching me from the darkness, eyes hiding somewhere, tracking my every step. I didn't dare turn off the lights while sleeping, but the light didn't ease my fear. It only made the darkness seem deeper. It felt as if something was waiting in the darkness, ready to emerge when I let my guard down. The sleepless nights went on, and the obsession grew stronger with each passing day. Every morning when I woke up, I anxiously looked around, checking if anything was different or if any items had been moved. I felt like I was living with a creep, but I couldn't figure out who he was. He left no trace, no clear sign, except for the scary notes and the mess in the apartment. The feeling of being invaded, watched, and helpless made me lose the confidence and peace I once had. I decided to leave the dorm and go back home, leaving all the fear and obsession behind. I didn't want to find out anything, and I believed that my choice was the best to keep my current life peaceful. I'm Karen, 18. Just moved into the dorms at Franklin College, a small, chill school in Ohio.
Since arriving late, I didn't have a lot of choices for a room. I ended up with a room on the top floor, which is pretty annoying for getting around. The hallway was dark, the windows were busted, and the wind blew through, making creepy noises. Even though I felt weird right from the start, I told myself it was all in my head and everything would be fine. When I opened the door, I saw JC, a classmate who had been here earlier. JC was quiet and had something kind of weird about her. There were crosses hanging all over the room, and the lights were always on, even during the day. Every night, JC would play music and curl up on the bed, her face always looking tense and scared. Her random gasps and jumps in the middle of the night made it almost impossible for me to get any sleep those first few days. I was so exhausted. I went to the dorm office to ask for a room change, but they were all full. With no other option, I decided to stick it out and figure out a way to deal with it. I decided to start a conversation, telling some funny stories to try and get JC out of her shell. At first she was quiet, but over time, we started getting closer. One Saturday night, while we were sitting on the floor eating pizza, JC finally opened up. She said that since moving into this room, she's been hearing a girl sobbing and whispering in a sad way. There were nights when loud banging noises came from the wall, but she couldn't figure out where they were coming from. JC thought this room had some creepy secret, and that fear made her unable to sleep without the lights and music on. Listening to her story, I got the chills and tried to tell myself that JC was just overthinking it. But after that day, everything started to change. The weird stuff JC told me about, I started feeling it too. One night, while JC was asleep, I was lying in bed and heard a soft knocking sound from the wall across from me. The knocking was steady, getting louder and louder, like someone was trying to break out. I jumped up, my heart racing and my whole body freezing. I shook JC awake, but when she opened her eyes, everything went silent. We just sat there, frozen under the light, with a creepy feeling filling the whole room. A few days later, while cleaning, I accidentally found a weird object stuck in the crack of the old cabinet. It was a dusty student ID with the name Tabby Nelson on it. In the photo, Tabby was this pretty girl with long brown hair and a big smile. When I read the info on the card, I realized Tabby was a student at the school, like 7 years older than us. That night, JC and I sat in front of our laptops looking up info about Tabby in the school system. The results shocked us both. Tabby Nelson had dropped out before even finishing her freshman year. There was no note, just the reason: sudden transfer. JC didn't stop. She kept searching through old news sites. Suddenly, JC stopped, her eyes wide, voice shaking as she read an article. Tabby Nelson went missing from her dorm. I just stared at the screen, reading those words. Almost 10 years ago, Tabby was last seen heading back to her room late at night. The police searched everywhere but didn't find a thing. What made me shiver even more was that the room Tabby had been in was ours now. I felt cold all over. The weird sounds JC heard, the crying and the knocking, it could have been Tabby Nelson. I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation, but I couldn't. This room wasn't just old and forgotten. It had a creepy story buried in it for years. Since that day, neither JC nor I could sleep. The knocking got louder and clearer, with whispers and sometimes soft sobs mixed in. One time, when I was lying down to sleep, JC suddenly shook me awake, her face pale. "Karen, there are footsteps on this ceiling." We both froze, holding our breath. The footsteps dragged slowly, then just stopped right above our heads. The next day,
We decided to look into it more seriously. After asking some seniors a few times, we heard rumors about what happened to Tabby. Some people whispered that Tabby had been taken by the dorm manager himself. They said Tabby had found out something she wasn't supposed to know, and to shut her up, the manager tried to get rid of her. After that, no one ever saw Tabby again. The room she'd stayed in was locked up right after and stayed empty for years. But because so many students were coming in this year, the school had to reopen the old rooms. That night, JC and I decided to do something crazy. Search for evidence inside the room. We grabbed flashlights and checked every corner of the room to see if anything was missing. When JC pulled out the bookcase, she shined the light on it and found an old wooden box. When we opened it, there was a diary inside with the name Tabby Nelson on it. JC and I opened the diary. Tabby's shaky handwriting told a terrifying story. He was always watching me, the dorm manager. He threatened me when I found out he was using girls for some terrible stuff. I didn't dare tell anyone. He said if I said anything, I'd disappear forever. If anyone finds this book, please tell the truth. I don't want to be forgotten. I put the book down, my hands shaking. JC hugged me and started crying. The next morning, we took the diary to the police. A few days later, the news spread like wildfire through the school. The police searched the dorm again and found a secret underground bunker. There, they found the remains of a young girl, later identified as Tabby Nelson. The dorm manager was arrested shortly after. He confessed to the crime. He killed Tabby to silence her after she found out he was abusing and threatening the girls. The whole school was shocked, unable to believe that such a horrible secret had been hidden for so many years. The last night before moving out of the dorm, I dreamed of Tabby. She stood in the dim light, her long hair loose, a gentle smile on her face. This time, she wasn't crying anymore. When I woke up, I felt a weight lift off my heart. Finally, the truth came out, and Tabby Nelson would no longer be a ghost lurking in the walls.
I'm Jason, and these are my two hands without fingers. This is the most painful and terrifying experience I've ever had. 10 years ago, I was a sophomore at the University of California, San Diego. I spent my free time working as a freelance deliverer. The job was risky, but it offered flexible hours and helped me cover my living expenses. Occasionally, I'd receive extra tips, which always made me excited. I'd been doing this job for nearly a year when that fateful night occurred. On that day, I didn't go to work. Instead, I spent time working on a presentation for the end of a course. I forgot to update my account on the order receiving website to not accepting orders. Around 10 p.m., my account received a notification about a delivery order. Before I could read all the details, my phone rang unexpectedly from an unknown number. I answered, and on the other end was a woman who wanted me to deliver the package to the specified address by midnight. She emphasized that it was 12 midnight and instructed me to be punctual. Before I could respond, the call ended abruptly. Right after that, the delivery fee was transferred to my account. Seeing the amount, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was 10 times more than my usual orders. Immediately, I forgot about the importance of my presentation. I rushed from my dorm to the location where the orders were gathered. On the package, there was an address and a phone number, but no recipient name. I started the delivery at 10:30 p.m. It was an old but spacious house tucked away in a narrow alley. Checking my watch, it was 11:57, and I stood at the door, ready and alert, not daring to waste a single second. As the clock struck midnight, I immediately rang the doorbell. But before the bell stopped ringing, the door of the house swung open. From inside, an elderly woman stepped out, looking at me with indifferent eyes. She was tall, but her skin was wrinkled and dark, with high cheekbones and sunken features, and her hair was disheveled, some parts long, some short. I politely greeted her and handed her the package. When I presented the delivery slip and asked her to sign to confirm the receipt of the package, she hesitated. Instead of signing, she stared at my hand for a moment before speaking in a deep, hoarse voice that startled me slightly. "Would you stay for dinner with me?" "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am, but Without letting me finish, she handed me $100, saying it was a tip. She promised to pay more if I agreed to have dinner with her and assured me it would only take 20 minutes. I agreed, feeling a bit crazy, but that's what I did at the time. I thought she might be very lonely and in need of companionship. Plus, it wouldn't take much time, and I could go home and continue preparing for tomorrow's presentation. Stepping into the house, everything was rather old but clean and orderly. She invited me to sit at the dining table, where food and utensils were already prepared for two. She went into the kitchen to get something. Wanting to break the silence, I asked her name. "Adela," came the short, indifferent reply. I tried asking a few more questions, but she didn't respond, so I fell silent. A moment later, she emerged, placing a pair of scissors and a gun on the table. I was both surprised and puzzled why dinner would require a gun. Adela placed the package on the table and used the scissors to open it. As soon as the last strip of tape was cut and the box was opened, I felt a horrifying regret for agreeing to dinner with her. The package I had delivered turned out to contain human fingers. Adela poured the blood-stained fingers onto her plate and mine. A chill ran down my spine. My skin crawled and my mind reeled in shock. I was too stunned to speak. Adela gripped the gun tightly and began devouring the fingers voraciously. She looked at me and ordered me to eat. Trembling, I lifted the fork and stabbed at a piece of salad near the fingers. I forced a bite of salad into my mouth, suppressing my urge to retch. The metallic stench of blood overwhelmed me, causing my head to spin. I gagged and clamped my mouth shut, sitting in silence as I watched the terrifying woman devour the fingers on the plate. My body was drenched in sweat, shivering uncontrollably, every cell in me trembling. Adela took a tissue to wipe the blood from her mouth just as the table clock unexpectedly chimed loudly. "The 20-minute dinner is over," Adela's terrifying voice echoed. She pulled out $100 and placed it on the table. Adela then initiated another transaction. She said she would pay me $100,000 if I'd let her eat all 10 of my fingers. "These fingers taste too ordinary. Your fingers look tastier," she said. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. This woman was truly insane. I began to feel uneasy, fully aware of everything around me, but I couldn't control my body anymore. I sat there witnessing the whole process of that insane woman eating my fingers, one by one, without resistance, pain, or screams. I woke up in the hospital with both hands bandaged. I still couldn't control my body. The doctor informed me that all 10 fingertips had been severed. Blood tests revealed I was poisoned with a toxin that rendered my body in a paralyzed state beyond control. A passerby found me in a dire condition by the roadside and brought me to the hospital. As for Adela, she was found dead in that house, choked on bone fragments lodged in her throat. She was infected with a virus that affected her brain and nervous system due to cannibalism. I abandoned my studies and lost a bright future ahead of me. If only I hadn't been consumed by greed and curiosity. I wish I could forget the horrifying images of that night forever. I'm Dean. I'd got a wife and 2 young kids, a girl and a boy. We all lived happily in the peaceful, beautiful town of Tyringham, Massachusetts. We both agreed on limiting electronic devices when it came to raising our kids. We'd spend time playing and chatting with our kids. My favorite family game when we had free time was hide and seek. Looking for someone in a familiar space is exciting. It's also a bit thrilling and unpredictable. Usually we hid, and then the kids did the searching. I usually picked spots where I was pretty visible, like sticking out my arms or feet to give the kids a hint. Once they found me, I joined the kids in searching for my wife. Unlike me, Iris picked the most unexpected hiding spots. In the same space, she hid in the most unexpected places, under the sofa, in the kitchen cabinet, you name it. Every time we found her, the kids burst into laughter, and it made us really happy. But eventually, the game started to get a bit boring. The kids lost patience if they had to search for too long. My daughter even got upset and cried if she couldn't find us. So we decided to switch up the game a bit. One person hid, and the other 3 searched. I definitely knew where Iris is hiding, but I wouldn't give it away right away. "I think I saw Mom hiding behind the kitchen cabinet," I told the kids, all excited. The kids giggled and dashed off to find their mom, but she was actually behind the shelf in the living room. To keep things interesting, we decided to stretch the game a bit for more suspense. One Saturday evening, after we all finished dinner, my son Terry said he wanted to play hide and seek, and everyone was totally on board. We decided that Iris would hide, and the rest of us would go looking for her. 1, 2, 3, 7, 10, 100. My daughter's sweet and not so serious counting made me and my wife crack up. We all heard my wife's joyful laughter, and I figured it was coming from the kitchen. "Hey kids, let's check the living room for Mom first." They immediately ran off calling for their mom. I just stood there, feeling the kind of happiness any dad feels watching their kids have a blast. Emma quickly turned around and said Mom wasn't there, and Terry always echoed her. "Okay, then you two check the bathroom." "Mom, don't change your hiding spot," Emma said loudly, grabbed their little brother's hand, and they both ran into the bathroom. "Dad, I still can't find Mom," my son ran back and said. I smiled and pointed to the kitchen. The kids got it, covered their mouths, laughed happily, and tiptoed over to the kitchen. I showed them where I knew my wife was hiding. "Gotcha!" The kids shouted with joy. I watched them and laughed out loud, but after a few seconds, their happy faces fell. She wasn't there. She must have sneaked off and changed her hiding spot. My wife could be so sneaky. I smiled and used a teasing voice to lift the kids' spirits again. "Little detectives, go check the bedroom for Mom. I'm sure she's there. Hurry up, you two." The kids went along, but they weren't as excited anymore. I followed the kids upstairs and pushed the door open. We were all surprised when we didn't see my wife. At this point, the kids officially gave up on the game. They ran back to the living room and grabbed their toys to play. I walked around the house calling out for her. "Honey, we've lost. Just come out." My wife was more stubborn than I'd thought. She'd hidden in all sorts of tricky spots, but I still managed to find her. Did she find a new hiding spot? "Honey, the kids aren't playing anymore. Come out." Then I heard a door bang in the basement. This time I was sure my wife was down there. I headed down the stairs to the basement. The dim light was even creepier than the darkness. I called her name loudly, but there was still no response. At this point, I started losing my patience. "Iris, it's not fun anymore. The kids and I aren't into the game anymore. You should come out. It's almost bedtime for them." All I got in response was silence, the gloom, and a bit of the musty smell of the basement. The light bulb kept flickering and then went out, leaving me swallowed by darkness. Not able to see anything, I stood still for a few seconds and called out for Iris again. I was really scared of not being able to figure out where I was. Iris, please. I heard a rattling sound of light, so I called out for my wife quickly, feeling a bit annoyed. I'm heading upstairs. I'm done with this game. I turned around and walked straight ahead, groping in front of me to find the stairs. Something brushed past my hand, and I quickly pulled it back and froze. I called out for Iris, but this time with a slightly louder, more annoyed voice. As I turned back toward the basement, I saw something flash past me. I was sure it wasn't Iris. She's less than 5 feet tall. The person I saw had to be over 7 feet tall. I ran as fast as I could, with urgency and panic taking over. If I could just reach the steps, I could find my way up to the house. I tripped and fell, my whole body tumbling down the stairs, with the impact making me feel like my insides were screaming. I got up and crawled out of the basement. I rushed to the living room to find my kids. "Emma! Terry!" I screamed. "What's wrong, honey?" Iris and the kids looked at me blankly. Turns out, my wife was just sitting in the living room playing with them. "Where have you been?" "I was hiding outside the house. You didn't expect that, did you?" I immediately pulled my wife and the kids into the room, leaving them all confused. I locked the door, told Iris what had happened, and called the police. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. They searched the basement and the whole house, but found nothing unusual. I called someone to demolish the basement, even though Iris wasn't happy about it, and changed all the locks in the house. I still can't explain what I saw that day, but the feeling I got when someone brushed past my hand still makes me shiver. I just wanted to make sure my wife and kids were as safe as possible. I've got an office job with a steady paycheck. Lately, I've been driving for a ride-hailing service whenever I've got some free time. Even though it's just a side gig, it brings in some pretty decent money. What I love about this driving gig is meeting and chatting with all kinds of people from different jobs. Getting 5-star reviews with nice comments from customers keeps me pumped all day. After a few months of juggling 2 jobs, I decided to take a few days off. I took a drive up to Oregon, known for its cool rainforests and awesome rivers. In the fall, the pine trees and maple leaves turn yellow and red, making everything look romantic. Honestly, I had my first love in Oregon, and everything about that first time was totally unforgettable. After 4 days soaking in the romantic vibes of Oregon, I headed back in the evening, because my car had some issues. Halfway through the trip, my phone buzzed with a notification from the ride-hailing app. There's a customer nearby waiting for you to pick up. Weirdly enough, I didn't have the app on ready mode since I was on vacation. A notification popped up again. There's a customer nearby waiting for you to pick up. Not wanting my star rating to hit a low, I went ahead and accepted the trip. When I got to the customer's place, according to the GPS, it started to drizzle, and I looked around but didn't see anyone. Out of nowhere, there was a knock on the passenger door. I turned around and saw a guy peeking inside. I rolled down the window and quickly told the customer to hop in the car. "The back seat of yours," he said while pointing, and I glanced in that direction too. My back seat was loaded with stuff for the trip. "I'm sorry. I can just chill in the passenger seat. Is it a hassle for you?" "I'm fine, no worries." He opened the door and hopped in, and I felt lucky to have an easygoing customer. But his face looked pretty stiff. Checking out where the customer wanted to go, I got lucky, because it was on the same route as my place. Oregon is beautiful, isn't it? "Yeah, I really love Oregon." "But how did you know I was just there?" I was totally surprised. He looked at me and said, I guess so, especially with all the stuff in your car. I just nodded and smiled. After chatting for a bit, I thought he was pretty cool, but the look on his face could be kind of misleading. Does your job feel more stressful since you got promoted? I didn't answer his question and just shot him a suspicious look. Sorry, but did I ever say that? You told me that a few minutes ago, he replied, not even looking at me. I don't really remember. Maybe I did say it, but I'm not sure, so I just nodded and let it go. The vibe went quiet, and I just focused on driving, not really paying much attention to the passenger next to me anymore. It wasn't pouring, but visibility was kinda low, so I had to drive super careful. I got home 20 minutes earlier than I thought I would. Glancing back at the map to check the exact address the passenger booked, I was shocked and hit the brake hard without even thinking. This is my home address, I screamed inside my head, trying to open my eyes as wide as I could to see the address clearly again. What's up, Philip? The guy asked in a way that gave me the creeps. How do you know my name? I swear, I never said my name. This guy was really sketchy. There's no way I mentioned going on vacation in Oregon or getting promoted at work. What's your deal? How do you know my name and all this info? I switched to high alert and said it in a serious tone. I just want to go home. His cold eyes were the last thing I really saw clearly. My feet were glued to the gas pedal when I heard the loud crash of a collision. I felt the airbag go off, and my head and hands were bleeding. I turned to look at the guy next to me, and the worst thought hit me. He might be dead, but there was no one there. The car door was still closed, and the man had vanished. Someone yelled really loud and then rushed to call the police. My vision went all blurry and red, and then I blacked out. When I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't believe I actually made it through. Luckily, I only had some minor injuries to my soft parts. Police took my statement and looked into it for a month. In the end, they figured the guy was just my imagination or a hallucination because I was worn out from driving. I still remember the guy's voice and face super clearly, even though it's been almost 8 years. I stopped driving for a living and never drove at night again.
I am Mia, 31 years old, and I work as a manager at Rudy's Country in Austin. I just moved to a new place to make it more convenient for commuting to work. Everything here would be perfect if it weren't for the eccentric neighbor across from my house. My job allows me to have plenty of free time every morning. Therefore, I usually start my day with a cup of tea and watch the news.
The Austin City Police Department has reported the disappearance of a young woman named Gail Morgan, 29 years old. Disappearances always target women and children, those with weaker ability to resist.
I muttered to myself, simultaneously considering the idea of applying for a permit to own a gun for self-defense. Seeing the image of the young woman on the news was really pitiful. It seemed like I had seen her somewhere before. It was just a fleeting thought, and I quickly got ready to go to work. The workday was busy since it was the weekend, but the image of the missing girl kept lingering in my mind. Driving home from work at 10 p.m., I accidentally saw my neighbor dragging a cart full of cardboard boxes. I politely greeted him, but all I received in response was an indifferent and emotionless attitude. After a whole day of work until late, I didn't feel tired at all, but just a brief encounter with the neighbor left me feeling frustrated. I told myself I wouldn't bother paying any attention to that eccentric guy anymore. But things didn't simply just end there. I took a shower, changed clothes, and lay down on the bed to relax around midnight. As I was about to drift off to sleep, a noise from an object I couldn't identify woke me up. I sat up, looking toward the window with annoyance and irritation. It seemed to be coming from the neighbor's house, and it sounded like a chainsaw. I got out of bed and walked over to open the window. It was definitely coming from his house, as the lights inside were still on. As I was thinking about how to respond to the noise, it suddenly stopped. But I was already wide awake and tossed and turned until nearly 2 a.m. In the following days, I was busy with work, so I only spent about 6 to 7 hours at home each day. Finally, there came a day when I could relax and rest. I slept straight through until 2 p.m., woke up, had a light salad, and planned to go back to bed. But the sound of arguing from the neighbor's house caught my attention. In front of the neighbor's house across the street, 2 women from the neighboring houses were showing clear signs of frustration. I could faintly hear the argument, which seemed to be about the neighbor refusing to clean his house, causing garbage smells to affect the 2 families next door. The neighbor threw them hostile glares, his mouth constantly muttering to himself. "I'll clean up this afternoon," he said, then stormed inside and slammed the door shut. I sighed in frustration and went back inside. Thankfully, the unpleasant smell hadn't reached my house yet. By evening, I saw that neighbor drive back in a small pickup truck with something large and heavy in the back, like a wardrobe. At that moment, I wondered what kind of noise the night would bring. But after that day, there were no more noises or complaints about the unpleasant smell coming from the neighbor's house. I thought maybe things would settle down as long as I didn't pay any more attention to that guy. But fate had one final encounter in store for me with him. One that would leave me with an obsession I couldn't escape. Once again, I saw the news report about the mysterious disappearance of Gail Morgan. In that moment, I jumped up, my gaze instantly turning toward the neighbor's house. That's right, it was her, the girl who had lived at his house for a while. I had seen her a few times, but just only briefly. Chainsaw, the smell, the wardrobe. I pieced everything together and suddenly shuddered. I rushed to lock all the doors in the house, called the police, and chose to remain anonymous. About 20 minutes after the police arrived, he was handcuffed, escorted to the car, and another SWAT team arrived to search the house. I couldn't see what happened inside. The next day, following the news, the police announced that they had found Gail, but she was not intact. She had been hidden in the fridge and freezer in the neighbor's house. The reasons behind the neighbor's brutal actions and his criminal mindset were beyond the explanation of any expert. I didn't go home for a week after that and chose to stay at a hotel because of the haunting fear. I couldn't bear the thought of living across from the home of a cold-blooded, sick murderer. The story above is based on a real event that occurred on May 22nd, 2019. The Michigan police in the United States received a tip-off call. The caller concealed their identity and provided the police with a single address, telling them that they would find Kelly Jean Warner, the woman who had been missing for weeks, at that location. At that moment, no one could have imagined that the phone call would lead them to uncover a truly horrific case, one that would haunt many of the American police officers involved. The perpetrator was the victim's boyfriend. He imprisoned her and used all kinds of brutal torture to make his girlfriend lose her basic human physiology and have to rely entirely on him. Finally, he murdered and dismembered the unfortunate girl into many pieces and hid them in the house, living as if nothing had happened. The killer was considered one of the most cruel and perverse criminals in U.S. history.